Welcome to Husband Talking. Explore riveting tales of infidelity with us. Please subscribe and like to stay updated. Let's begin.
I thought I had it all: a loving wife, a promising career, and a perfect life, but one night shattered my illusions. I discovered the woman I loved, my beautiful Emily, was betraying me with my boss. It started with late-night texts, hidden glances, and then the unthinkable: a secret affair right under my nose. I watched in horror as the truth unraveled, revealing her lies and deceit. My heart broke, but my resolve hardened. This wasn't just infidelity, it was a calculated betrayal. Now I must expose their treachery and reclaim my life from the ashes of our shattered dreams. This is my story. Enjoy watching it. Samuel Spencer sat in the dark, alone, thinking hard. Not long ago, he thought he had everything: a great job at a good company that paid well, a nice home, and a wife who loved him. He still had the job and the home, but his love life was now in pieces. He thought back to when he first met Emily, his wife for almost 6 years. She had just joined the company he worked for, the Sullivan Capital Group. This company helped small businesses handle their money. Emily started by doing small office tasks that needed to be done. Then about 5 months ago, she became the executive assistant to Brian Sullivan, Samuel's boss. Brian was part of the family that started the company. His granddad set it up, and his dad, Michael, was the current big boss. Michael put his son Brian into the business right after he finished college, making him learn from the ground up. Brian did well and got moved up to regional manager, only answering to Michael and the board. One day Brian would take over everything, but that was still a long way off. Samuel really looked up to Michael. To him, Michael was like a second dad, helping Samuel adjust to normal life after he got hurt in Afghanistan. They met while Samuel was doing tough exercises to get better. Michael, who was there for a meeting, stopped to watch Samuel and was impressed. Over lunch that day, Michael learned that Samuel had just finished his business studies before going off to fight. They talked a lot, and Michael found out more about Samuel's drive and his past. Michael liked the young Marine a lot and offered him a job then and there. Samuel was taken aback but said yes and started working for Michael the next Wednesday. That was almost 8 years back. Samuel got better with help and put his all into work, also taking night classes for his MBA. Then he met Emily. He liked her a lot from the start. After making sure work was okay with it, he asked her out. They dated, fell in love, and got married. Michael shocked Samuel by paying for their trip to Hawaii for their honeymoon. 2 years after getting married, Michael hired his son Brian. Samuel hoped Brian would be like his dad, but he was not. Brian liked to show off, always reminding people who his dad was and that he would one day get the top office. Brian ended up making everyone not like him. One day, Michael talked to Samuel about his son, sharing the same worries others had. Soon he'll need to make him the regional manager, Michael said. I get it, Samuel replied. I'm hoping you can set a good example and help Brian get used to the job, Michael said. Can you do that? He'll try, Samuel said, but it won't be easy. Be honest about him, Michael said. Leave out that he's my son. Tell me the truth. All right, Samuel said. He thinks too highly of himself to do well. I think he won't listen, flirts too much, and uses his name to get what he wants. Emily says he's just asking for trouble, talking too much about the women he chases. Michael shook his head. I feared that, he said. His mom spoiled him since he was small, let him do too much. I thought bringing him in might help him grow up a bit. They'll have to chat with him. So when's Henry Brooks going to stop working? Samuel asked. Henry Brooks, the big boss now, had been here a long time and everyone liked him. Had been talking about stopping work for a while and got a place up in Colorado so he and his wife could enjoy the quiet while they were still not too old. In the next 4 months or so, Michael said. He really wants to. I get it, honestly, Samuel said. Michael left the room saying he'd keep in touch. Samuel knew he meant it. There were things Samuel noticed in Brian that he didn't share with Michael. Looking back, he thought maybe he should have. A few months after that talk, Henry stopped working, and Michael gave Brian his job. Brian started changing things quick. Some changes were okay, but Samuel wasn't sure about some others. Still, he kept doing his work, trying not to let Brian bother him too much. Brian did change as he got used to the job, But Samuel didn't really like how Brian liked to control everything too much, which annoyed the team. He also moved people around a lot, sometimes into jobs they couldn't do well in. One day, about 5 months back, Brian walked into Samuel's office. He sat down as Samuel was talking to a client on the phone. When Samuel finished, he saw Brian smiling in a way he didn't like. "What do you need, Brian?" Samuel asked. "I'm thinking about getting a new EA," he said, "and I think Emily would be great for it." "My wife," Samuel said. "That Emily?" Brian nodded, still smiling. "Yep, the same one," Brian said. "What's wrong with Marcy?" Samuel asked. Marcy Davis had worked as Henry's EA for years. "Nothing," Brian said. "Looks like she's planning to stop working soon, and the office could do with a fresh face." Samuel thought to himself it seemed more like Brian wanted a new pretty face around. "Have you talked to Emily yet?" Samuel said. "Not yet," he answered. "Wanted to see what you thought first." "Oh?" Samuel asked, curious. "Thanks, but why me?" "I just want to know what she's like," Brian replied. Living with her and all. Is she tough to handle, or is she always happy? Is she fun or all business? I want to know what to expect if I hire her." Samuel didn't like where this was heading. "Listen, Brian," Samuel said firmly. "Emily and I are happy together. Yes, she's great to be with and she's my wife. Also, she's a pro. If you think she's right for the job, then ask her. It's up to her if she takes it or not. But remember, she's my wife." Samuel made sure to stress that point. "I get it," Brian said. "You've heard the talk and it bugs you. I'd feel the same if I had someone as stunning as Emily. The job involves travel, sometimes even nights away. Are you cool with that?" "I trust Emily," Samuel stated. "If she's okay with the job, knowing it includes travel, then she knows the limits and I expect you to respect those limits in our marriage." "Sure thing, Samuel buddy," Brian smirked. "You and my dad are close. He admires you and so do I. Trust me, I'd never mess with you and Emily." "Better not," Samuel said. "Who knows," Brian added. "Could even land you a higher spot too." That evening, Samuel talked to Emily. "Did Brian talk to you today?" he asked as she finished up their dinner. "Yeah," she replied. "He hinted at wanting me to be his new assistant." "And how do you see it?" Samuel asked. "It would mean going places and staying up late, but it would also bring a good pay bump," she said. "We sure could use the extra cash, thinking of having kids someday." "Why, is something on your mind?" "I just can't forget what you said about him being trouble," Samuel said. "Do you still feel that way?" "I'd not be honest if I said it didn't worry me," she said. "I do hear things. Do you trust me?" She looked at him, waiting for an answer. "Of course I trust you," he said, "but him, I don't trust him at all. He stopped by my office today to ask about you. I found it odd." "Really? That's just him," she said. "What did you say?" Her eyebrows went up. "I said you're wonderful to be with, and that's the truth," Samuel said. "I made sure he knew we're happy together and that he should respect that." "I want that too," she said. "Good," Samuel said. "So, are you taking the job?" "I think so," she answered. That night, they shared a loving moment before sleep. She took the job like they thought. She was away every other week for 2 days and worked late 3 times a week. Samuel did his best to be there for Emily in her new job. He watched out but saw nothing wrong with how she did her job. Then something bad happened. Just over 4 months back, Michael had a big health scare, a stroke right at work. They called for help and took him to the hospital, but he didn't make it through the night. He was gone before he woke up. It hit everyone hard at work, and they all went to his funeral. Samuel and Emily were at a loss, seeing how many showed up. Brian thought he'd step into his dad's big chair and be the boss after his dad passed away suddenly. But the company's big shots didn't agree. They said Brian was just not ready and picked Samuel Jackson to fill in until they found someone right for the job. That hit Brian hard, and he decided to show he could do it. He had Emily working all hours, night after night, and took her on trips most weekends. It didn't matter if Samuel and Emily had plans. The schedule was tough on both of them, and it started to hurt their marriage. First off, they never got close anymore. Then he saw changes in what Emily wore. She used to dress all smart for work, but now she chose outfits that showed a bit more. Also, she wasn't the same with him. She used to be so warm and kind, but now she seemed upset a lot, and would snap at him over small stuff. He thought it might just be because she was so stressed with her job. Then one Sunday, when Emily got back from a Los Angeles trip, he knew they had to talk. "Emily," he said, "we need to chat." "About what?" she replied, voice sharp. "About us," he said. "I barely see you. What Brian's making you do, it's too much. It's hurting you and it's hurting us. We need some time off, just us, to fix things." "I'm sorry," she said after a pause, sounding tired. "Brian's just got so much going on. It's a mess. I can't just step away." "Tell Brian you're taking a week off," he urged. "You've got the time. We need this or we're not going to make it." She was quiet for a bit, thinking. He could tell she felt troubled too. At last, she nodded. "You're right, Samuel," she agreed. "I really need a break. Brian's been making me work real hard these last 4 months. They'll talk to him tomorrow." "Promise?" "Please do," Samuel said. The next day, Emily came home looking happier than Samuel had seen in a long while. "What happened?" Samuel asked. "I talked to Brian like I said I would, and he agreed we should take it easy," she said. "He said we could take next week off if we like, but we have to go to his party Saturday night." "Party?" Samuel asked. "What kind of party?" "Just a small meet-up with him and some friends," she said. Samuel wasn't too keen on this because he wasn't a fan of Brian, and he thought it wasn't good to get too chummy with your boss. As they say, being too close can lead to trouble. Plus, he was unsure about the other guests. "Do you know any of these folks?" Samuel asked. "I've met a few," she said. "They're mostly Brian's college pals, but a couple work with clients. I'm not sure who else will be there, though." "I see," Samuel said. "Okay, but you have to make sure you're home at a normal time this week." "Can you do that?" "I think so," she said. "But we have to work on the Anderson account on Thursday. Brian is having a dinner with them, and he needs me there." Samuel knew about the Anderson Industries account. It had become important because Michael had been in charge before he got sick. "Okay," Samuel said. "Thursday night, but you have to be home at a normal time the rest of the week. Deal?" She smiled and hugged him. "Deal," she whispered, kissing him. The next day, Brian came to Samuel's office and sat down like he always does with that annoying grin. "What can I do for you, Brian?" Samuel asked. "Emily told me you guys are good for Saturday night," Brian said. "Emily?" Samuel thought. "Yeah, we talked a bit last night," Samuel said. "If she gets back early this week and we have next week to just be us." "Sure. We've got that meal with the Anderson people on Thursday, but I swear no late nights after that." "What sort of party is this?" asked Samuel. "And who's going to be there?" "Just a chill hangout," Brian said. "Some college pals of mine, one works with a client, but it's laid back. Dress casual. Just bring Emily." Yeah, Samuel took this in and gave a nod. Brian had more to say. "Hey, Samuel pal," Brian said, making Samuel cringe a bit. "You were spot on. Emily's great to have around. Thanks for not fussing over her needing time to work. She's really good at what she does. I'd be stuck without her." Samuel wasn't sure how to feel. "Good to hear you like her work, Brian," he said. "Just one thing." "Yeah?" Brian said. "Do you call her Emily to her face?" Samuel asked. "Sure," he said. "Why?" "Just wondering," Samuel said. "That's all." That night, he talked to Emily about it while they were having dinner. "Do you let Brian call you Emily?" he asked. "Just wondering, 'cause you never let me use that name." "I guess since he's my boss, he can call me what he wants," said Emily. Samuel let it go, but it bothered him. The rest of the week was pretty good, and apart from Thursday night, she was back home on time and they were close every chance they got. Come Saturday, after Samuel pulled on jeans and a simple shirt, he watched Emily get ready for the party and noticed the dress she picked. He had never seen it before and wondered when she had bought it. It was way shorter than her other dresses and showed a lot more skin. "Wow," Samuel said. "You look amazing. Maybe we should just stay in." She flashed a smile. "Nope," she replied. "That's for later." "And where did you get that dress?" Samuel asked. "It's not like your usual style. I picked it up in Los Angeles," she answered. "Brian wanted me to wear it tonight." "That figures," he thought. "Be careful," Samuel warned. "Someone might get the wrong message." She laughed. "I don't think so," she said. "Everyone knows the limits." "They better," Samuel said, wrapping her in a hug. He tried to kiss her, but she stopped him. Later, she said. I don't want to ruin my makeup. They headed to Brian's place, a fancy two-story townhouse. When they rang the bell, Brian welcomed them in. Samuel could faintly smell weed and felt uneasy. 3 guys around Brian's age showed up, and Brian introduced them to Samuel. This is our main man, Samuel Spencer, Brian announced with a wide grin. And these are Ryan Scott, Alan Foster, and Nick Palmer. Nick works for Anderson, by the way. Samuel met all 3 guys with a handshake, wondering why Brian called him the man of the hour. He also thought about why Brian didn't introduce Emily to them. Did she know them already? Brian then turned to Emily. Wow, Emily, you look so hot in that dress, he said. I knew it. Don't you guys think so? He asked, looking at the others. They all agreed, almost drooling over her. Emily smiled and spun around, showing off the dress. They let out whistles of liking. Samuel had to agree she did look nice, but he wasn't happy with how Brian was acting. Oops, where are my good ways? Brian said. Let me get you 2 something to drink. Emily, white wine for you, right? And you, Samuel? That works for me too, Samuel said. I really don't drink a lot. My body can't take much. Samuel didn't really have a problem with drinks. In truth, he could outdrink them if he wanted. He used to drink a lot but stopped while in the Marines. The last time he drank too much, he almost hurt someone bad. He promised himself he wouldn't drink like that again. No worries, Brian said. They'll be right back. Brian came back with 2 drinks and gave them to Samuel and Emily. Emily drank a lot from hers quickly while Samuel sipped his slowly. Samuel felt something was off and decided to stay as clear-headed as possible. Brian asked everyone to sit in the living room. Samuel followed Emily and saw her choose a small sofa. He wanted to sit by her, but Brian sat there first. Samuel then sat on a couch across from them and kept an eye on his wife. Brian caught his look. Sorry, pal, he said. Just used to sitting here. It's fine, Samuel replied, watching his wife closely. She looked back but couldn't make out his face. They sat for a bit, just making light talk. Brian glanced at Samuel before he began. My dad said you were a Marine, he noted. Samuel gave a nod. Yep, I was in for 6 years, then got sent home for health reasons, he shared. Ryan peered at Samuel. Marines, right? He poked. I hear they're tough. You ever fight? Ever take someone out? Slowly, Samuel nodded. He didn't like it when folks brought this up. Yes, he spoke softly. Which? Fight or take someone out? Ryan pushed. Both, replied Samuel. Emily stared at him, shocked. This was new to her. He spent years trying to push those memories away. You never mentioned that, she said. Don't like talking about it, he answered. Alan pulled out a big bag. Samuel knew it as weed. It was okay to buy here, but he wasn't into it, having tried once in high school. Hey, Alan chimed. Got some good stuff. Want to try? Sure, Brian jumped in. The rest, including Emily, said. Yes. Samuel hadn't seen her smoke. Not even weed. Alan rolled a big one and lit it. He passed it around, and all took a puff. When it came to Samuel, he waved it off. No thanks, he said. Not for me. Nick moved it on to Brian. Brian took a puff and faced Samuel. Loosen up, Samuel, he pressed. It's just a bit of fun. You do you, Samuel replied. I'd rather stay sharp tonight. You're called dude, Brian said. It's a party. If you end up too out of it, you can crash here. You've got next week off. He looked at Emily. Shotgun? He asked. Samuel was taken aback as she grinned and nodded keenly. Yeah, she said. Brian had the burning end in his mouth, and Emily opened hers as he blew lots of smoke her way. She took it all in, coughed a bit. She hit her chest as she breathed in. This is some good stuff, she said. Samuel was shocked and wondered who this lady was. Brian gave the joint back to Alan. You see, Brian said, nodding at Samuel. This guy is the best at crunching numbers in our place. Man, he saved us a ton of money. Not just that, but without him, I wouldn't have this cool lady helping me out. Emily gave him a smile, and Samuel saw it wasn't just a normal thank you smile. It had something more. He also saw how she paid close attention to everything he said. Really, Brian said, looking at Samuel. I think of her as my office partner. He touched Emily's leg, and Samuel thought he saw Brian's hand move up her skirt. Samuel saw Emily blush for a second before Brian moved his hand away. Honestly, I'd be a mess without her, Brian added. Me too, Samuel said, watching Brian. He noticed that Emily looked down for a second. They'll be right back. Need the bathroom, Samuel said, breaking the quiet in the room. Sure, Brian said. It's down the hall, first door on your left. Samuel got up and went into the bathroom. He locked the door, looked in the mirror, and thought hard. Top of his thoughts was that Emily might be seeing Brian behind his back. Brian was right about one thing: Samuel was a top-notch number guy because he looked at the small stuff. It was something Michael showed him when he started. Look, kid, it's not all about the numbers in any deal. The tricky bits are always hidden in the small stuff, the old man said. Keep an eye on those, trust your feeling, and you'll do fine. Samuel kept those words close, and they always helped him. Now he had other small things to figure out. First, there was the thing about Emily's dress, or the lack of it. Then how she was with Brian. Third, her using drugs. He never saw her do that before. They never even tried them together. But now here she was, happy to take what Brian gave her. Then how she acted when Brian touched her and what Brian called her work wife. What was that? Plus all the small things he picked up on for 4 months. All this added up to big trouble, maybe even the end of their marriage. He felt like something bad was going to go down, and he knew he had to leave with proof. He thought about just grabbing Emily and going, but that would likely just lead to a big argument and put off what seemed sure to come. He saw his cell phone peeking out of his shirt pocket. That was it. He took out his phone, started recording a video, and then put it back in his pocket. After using the bathroom and washing his hands, he got ready to face whatever was outside the door. As he walked back in, he saw Emily quickly sit up from the coffee table. He noticed a few small bits of white powder on her nose, likely from sniffing cocaine. Brian and the other 3 men had white powder on their noses too. He saw guilt on her face. He sipped from his glass and saw tiny bits of some powder in it. What the heck? He put the glass down, seeing everyone's eyes on him. He tried to speak but just felt so tired and couldn't get the words out right. You okay? Emily's voice came to him. He looked at her all confused, words lost. Brian and the 3 men got up. Emily grabbed Brian's arm as she stood too. He looked at everyone, wondering what was next. Trying to stand was too hard for him. How about a short nap, Samuel buddy? Brian said, as his feet were lifted onto the couch by the others. Samuel couldn't move or speak as Emily took off his shoes. He wanted to stand up, take her hand, and rush out, looking around for anything to help himself. He saw her thong on the seat where she and Brian sat. He was mad at her. Emily came to him and put a blanket over him. He wished he could push her away, but his arms wouldn't move. She bent down and kissed his forehead. I'm sorry, Samuel, she whispered. I really do love you. He couldn't keep his eyes open and fell asleep. When he woke up, it was dark. He wiped his eyes and looked around. It seemed no one else was up. He heard only snoring from upstairs. Checking his phone, he found out he had slept for over 3 hours. He stopped the video he was recording and put the phone away. He snuck up the stairs and peeked into the main bedroom, staying hidden. He saw Emily naked, close to Brian on the bed, her arm and leg over him. Seeing this made him feel sick. One of the 3 men was also without clothes next to Emily on the big bed. The other 2 men were sleeping too, one on a couch and another in a big chair in the corner. He went down quietly. He wanted to know what they had given him, so he found a Tupperware in Brian's kitchen. He put the drink inside and screwed the lid on tight. Back in the living room, he took Emily's keys from her bag and saw a key he hadn't noticed before. It looked like a house key, but it wasn't one of theirs. Acting on a hunch, he pulled the key off and stuffed it in his pocket. Then he had another thought and grabbed Emily's phone, putting it in his pants pocket. He planned on going through it later on. Pulling his wedding ring off, he set it carefully on the top of her purse so she would easily see it. He put his shoes back on and crept to the door. Details, he thought to himself. He looked around but didn't see a security system or a console anywhere near the door. Opening the front door, he tried the key he took off Emily's ring. It fit perfectly just as he thought it might. He quietly closed the door behind him, locking it with her key. He got in his car, closing the door as quietly as he could. He backed out of the driveway and left, not turning his lights on until he was on the street. He had an idea and pulled into a convenience store. He pulled out his phone and looked up his old friend, Brian Michaels. In the service, Samuel knew him as Corporal Evans, but all his friends simply called him Brian. After he left the service, he started his own private investigative firm, and Samuel helped him with the financial details. "Hello?" a sleepy Brian said when he answered the phone. "Hey Brian, it's me, Samuel," Samuel said. "Sorry to call so late, but I need your help." "What's up, Samuel?" Brian asked. "You get in a bar fight and need me to bail you out or something?" "Not quite," Samuel said. "Can you be at my place in about 15 or 20 minutes?" "Yeah, sure," Brian said. "Everything all right? What's going on?" "I'd rather not talk about it over the phone," Samuel said. "Gotcha," Brian said. "They'll see you in about 20 minutes. "Thanks, buddy," Samuel said. "I appreciate it." "Hey, Semper Fi, do or die, right?" Brian asked. Samuel chuckled. Brian liked to say that a lot. "Ora," Samuel said. They ended the call and Samuel looked at the store. He thought to himself. He bought a 6-pack of beer and a couple packs of cigarettes. He hadn't lit a smoke since his army days, but now he felt like if he didn't do something quick, he'd end up hitting something or someone. When he got home, he threw the beer in the fridge, snagging one for himself. He tore into a pack of smokes and fired one up as he flopped onto the couch, using a gift dish with their photo in it for an ashtray. It was a wedding gift for them, and Emily liked to fill it with sweets. He didn't mind if Emily would nag about the smoke smell, not after what went down earlier. Just then, the doorbell rang, and it was Brian. He let his buddy in and handed him a beer. "What's going on?" Brian asked as he cracked open his beer. Samuel spilled the beans about the mess from before. "Damn," Brian said after hearing it all. Samuel passed him the bottle with the spiked wine. "Can you check this out?" he asked. Brian nodded. "Sure, but it might take till Wednesday or Wednesday to know anything," Brian said. "I also need all you have on Brian Sullivan, Ryan Scott, Alan Foster, and Nick Palmer," Samuel said. "Samuelson works at Anderson Industries. No clue what he does." He pulled up a video on his phone, searching for a shot of all four. "Harasa pic, not great though." "Got it," said Brian. "You need eyes inside his place and yours too if you can do it," Samuel said. "Harasa key." No sign of an alarm, but who knows? Brian took the key and looked it over. "Right," he said. "But you get this won't work in court." "Yeah, I knew," Samuel said. "This is just for us. I really don't care about what's right or wrong now." "I get you," Brian said. Samuel gave Brian a spare key to his place. "Take this key," Samuel said. He scribbled a 4-number code and handed it over. "And this is to get past my alarm. I might not need the key. I can set up some tech gear while I'm here," Brian offered, giving the key back. "Top-notch cameras, sound gear, everything. I can even catch what's said on your phone." "Do it," Samuel agreed. "What will this cost me?" "Don't stress," Brian replied. "You helped me big time in Afghanistan. It's the least I can do." "Thanks, buddy," Samuel said. "At least let me pay your costs." "Fine if you want," Brian said. "What else you got?" "We only saw a bit of your video. Let's watch some and look for hints." Samuel played the video again from the top. "Hold on there," Brian said. Samuel hit pause. "Can you go back a bit?" Samuel rewound, and they saw Emily finish a line of white powder on the table. Samuel stopped the video. "Damn," he murmured. "I caught her sitting back, but there's clearly white powder on the table." "Sure looks like it," Brian noted. "Ever seen Emily do that before?" Samuel shook his head. "Nope," he answered. "All right, let's see what else we got," Brian said. Samuel hit play, and they saw when Samuel sat down across from Emily. "Wait," Brian said. Samuel paused the video again. "What's that?" He pointed at something on the other chair. Samuel squinted and saw it was Emily's underwear. "Oh man," he said. "I saw that just before I blacked out, but I thought my eyes were tricking me. She must have taken it off right after I went to the bathroom." He played the video, and they could see when the drug began to hit Samuel. They saw the camera aiming up as he lay down and looked as the other four stared down at him. They heard Emily ask if he was okay and Brian telling him to nap. Then they saw Emily bend over him and whisper in his ear. Samuel remembered this, but he couldn't recall what came next. "You sure you don't want to tie him up and have him watch us?" Alan asked. "No," Emily said. "This is enough for tonight. We have all week, you know. We can always go further if he doesn't fit in," Brian said. "You know, Nick likes guys and girls. Maybe he could show old Samuel a new side of fun," he added, making everyone laugh. Samuel felt his cheeks get hot as he heard Emily join in. "That I'd like to see," she said. "Really?" they heard Ryan ask. "You'd let me do that with your man?" "Why not?" she said. "Maybe if you're kind, you can get him to do more while I join in with a toy." They all laughed again. "Wow, never had a Marine before," Ryan said. "I bet he can't do it as well as you, though." Samuel had to stop himself from smashing his phone. "But really, Brian, is he going to be okay? You didn't give him too much, right?" Emily checked. "No worries," Brian said. "He'll sleep for about 12 hours, wake up a bit off. He'll think he just had too much to drink. Brian Oro, show him the really strong stuff. By this time next week, Samuel here will love it. Maybe he'll even make him yearn for me. Shame his dad can't see his hero fall." "Is that why you're mad at him?" they heard Emily ask. "All through college, that's all I heard about. Samuel going to school while serving his country, how he worked hard while fighting for America. Sometimes I felt Dad wished Samuel was his son instead of me. Well, guess what, Dad? Now I'm the boss of Samuel. I got his girl, and soon your top guy will be lost to bad stuff." They all laughed at that. "Are you guys with me?" he asked. They heard them all say yes. "How about you? Emily? You in? If not, say now and you're out with him." "I'm in," Emily said. "I've come to like this too much to leave." They think she meant liking Brian's thing, as we couldn't see what she was talking about. "Okay then," Brian said. "Let's go up and start the fun." "Good," Emily said as they walked up. "This time I want you guys to fill me up." They couldn't see the move, but they heard sounds of them being together from the room. Samuel stopped the video and put his head down. Brian put his hand on Samuel's shoulder. "I know this is hard, but we'll help you," he said. Samuel nodded. "Thanks, Brian," he said. "What will you do?" Brian asked. "I'm leaving her, no doubt," Samuel said. "I get it," Brian said. "Why don't you take a break from here for a bit? Let me and the team handle this." "What are you planning to do?" Samuel asked. "It's best if you don't know," Brian said. "But I'll say this. We just saw a bad plan. If I can, someone will end up in jail. But you need to get away for a while." "I can help," Samuel said. Brian shook his head. "No," Brian said. "You're at risk now and we don't want you facing them. Remember old Steve Mitchell? He's retired in Vegas now. He owes me a few favors. He said he'd find me a place if I ever came to Vegas. I'll call him and see what he can do for you." Samuel nodded. "Okay," he said. "Let me set up the sound and video here, then he'll go. You got to stay put. Okay?" Samuel nodded. "Thanks, Brian. You're a real pal." "I'm thankful," Samuel said. Brian grinned. "Always loyal, buddy. Go all out," Brian said. "Hell yeah," Samuel replied. He went to the back deck with a beer as Brian put sound and video gear in the living room and bedrooms. Brian also hooked into the house phone. He made it so all sound and video saved to a cloud thing online. After done, he gave Samuel the web place and how to get in to see the files. He showed Samuel the button to turn the spy gear on or off. "I'll ring Steve tomorrow and tell you what's up," Brian said. "Well, fix this. Don't mess up, you got it?" "I got it, Brian," Samuel said. "Hope so, Samuel," he said. "Stay strong, mate. I'll ring you." "I will, Brian," Samuel said. "Thanks a ton for all." After Brian left, Samuel went on his computer and checked his bank stuff. He had an old account just to himself from before he wed Emily. He put 15 of what he made in it just in case. He hoped to spend it on a cruise for Emily as a surprise, but that's over now. He moved half from their shared bank to his old one, then paid off and cut their shared cards. He had a card just to himself from the old account. Closing that down, he packed clothes for a few days and put the bags in his car. Back inside, he saw their wedding photo on the wall above the fireplace. Emily looked so pretty in her wedding dress. He was so happy then, thinking he was so lucky. But not now. Mad at her cheating, he grabbed a big knife and cut up the photo. Once done, he looked around and took down every photo showing Emily. He threw them all into the fireplace. He ran upstairs, grabbed her wedding dress from the closet, and threw that into the fire too. He thought about lighting it up right then but decided to wait. At that moment, he was full of deep, dark hate for her and wanted her to see their marriage burn with her own eyes. Then he got another idea. With a beer in hand, he went back to the couch and picked up his phone. He sent the video to himself and checked it on his laptop. He wrote a simple, clear letter to every person on the board and to Samuel, the temporary CEO, explaining what had happened. He remembered a tip from Michael: the board didn't like threats, but they would listen to a careful breakdown of events. He didn't know Samuel well, having only talked to him a few times, but he hoped he was as sensible as the board members. He didn't threaten anyone, but he pointed out that Brian, as a leader, was supposed to follow certain rules about behavior. His actions, along with his wife's, were the exact kind of wrongs these rules aimed to stop. He also pointed out these wrongs were against the law and could lead to big problems and shame, the kind that could wreck a firm like Sullivan Financial. He shared his long history with the company, his deep respect for Michael, and his hope that they would act rightly. He went over his words, tweaking a bit here and there. Happy at last, he wrote an email, attached the letter and the video, and sent it to Samuel and every board member. He told them he'd be off for a week, but reachable by email or phone. He guessed he'd hear nothing until Wednesday, and by then, he planned to leave this place. He sat back, lit a cigarette, and put it in the candy dish, letting the heat touch Emily's picture. That's what he wanted to do to her right then. He picked up her phone, knowing the code since he set it up for her. Going through her texts made him madder. It seemed they had been together for 5 months, but only in the last 3 did Emily start being mean to him about Brian. Of course, he thought her being with Brian was mean enough. He found a lot of pictures of a man's private part, which Samuel had to say was big. He wondered if it was Brian's or someone else's. There were other pictures too, pictures of Brian and Emily being close and dancing, maybe in Los Angeles, and pictures of Emily with signs of being with more than one man. Other pictures showed her with 2 men at once. One showed a big man behind her and Brian in front. He wondered who took these pictures and whether they were taken with this phone or another. She also had videos on the phone, videos of her with Brian and other men, including the 3 from the party. No wonder she acted like she knew them, he thought. So this is what she did while saying she was on work trips. He saved everything he could and sent it to himself using her phone. By then, he had finished 6 beers and half a pack of cigarettes, putting them out on her picture in the dish. He looked outside and saw the dawn. Soon, he thought, she would wake up and find out he was gone. He thought she'd be up soon, so he grabbed his gun, checked it was ready, and locked his door twice. Then he lay down on the sofa with the gun close and tried to sleep. Emily woke and saw it was 8:30 by the clock next to Brian's bed. She got up, went to wash up, and by the time she was done, Brian and the rest were awake. Brian put on a robe and asked, "Emily, want to help make breakfast? Samuel might want coffee if he's up." "Yeah, okay," she said. She wore a robe, went down barefoot to the kitchen, started coffee, and went to wake her husband in the living room. Then she saw he wasn't there. The blanket she'd put on him was moved, and his shoes were missing. She ran around the ground floor, thinking he might be in the washroom, but he wasn't. Looking out the front window, she saw their car was gone. She turned and saw his ring on her purse on the coffee table. "Oh no," she gasped. She ran upstairs, calling out. Brian caught her as she ran into their bedroom. "What's wrong?" Brian asked. "He's gone," she said. "Gone? What do you mean?" he asked. "He's gone, damn it," she yelled. "He got up in the night and left, took the car and left his ring." "Damn," Brian said. "You better call him, see where he is, tell him to come get you." "Okay," she said, running back down. She put Samuel's ring in her purse and looked for her phone, but it was missing. She was sure she had it with her last night. Brian was now downstairs too. "I can't find my phone," she said. "It's fine," Brian said. "Use the landline." "You don't get it," she said. "I always have it with me. It's got messages and the photos and videos you sent. If he's got it, he's seen them." "Don't sweat it," Brian said. "We just need to get him here. Me and the guys will handle it. Call him. Emily nodded and picked up the phone in Brian's place. Her hands shook as she dialed Samuel's number, hoping he'd pick up. "Hello," Samuel said, sounding like he just woke up. "Samuel, it's me," she said softly. "What do you want?" he barked. Emily jumped. He had never talked to her like that. She knew he had to be really mad. She had no clue. "Samuel, you weren't here when I woke up, and I got scared," she said. "Are you okay? Why do you care?" He snapped. "Please, I need you to come get me at Brian's," she tried. "Please." Samuel laughed. "No way," he snapped. "I'm not dumb anymore. Don't call me sweet names again." "Samuel, don't be mad," she begged. "I do love you." "Yeah, right," he said. "Tell me another." "Samuel, we have to talk," she said. "You're right, we do," he agreed. "Then come get me at Brian's," she said. "We can talk on the way back." "Nope," he said, making her flinch again. "I'm not coming over. If you want to come home, walk or get an Uber. We just need to talk about breaking up." "What do you mean, breaking up?" she asked. "That's what happens when people divorce," he said coldly. "I don't want a divorce," she said. "Well, I didn't want to be tricked and cheated on," he said. "Get back home if you need to talk. But hear me, don't let Brian or any of those guys bring you. I have a gun, and if they come in my house, I'll shoot them dead. I swear. You got that, girl?" "Okay, I'll grab an Uber," she said. "Do that," Samuel said, "and bring cash or your bank card." "Why?" she asked. "'Cause your credit card's dead," he said. "Why is my credit card dead?" she asked. "I cut it off last night," he said. "Oh," she said, low. "You know where my phone is?" "Yeah, it's on the coffee table," Samuel said. "Found a whole bunch of pics and videos. Now I see what you and that jerk were doing when you said you were on work trips. They'll help me in the divorce." "Oh my God," she whispered. "Samuel, I'm so sorry," she said. "I didn't want to hurt you." "Shut up and keep your lies to someone who cares," he said. "If you want to talk, do it now and come alone." "They'll be there," she said, ending the call. She put the phone down and looked at Brian. "Well?" Brian asked. "He won't come," she said. "He said I need to go to him." "Fine," Brian said. "Well, take you." She shook her head. "No," she said. "He got a gun and said he'd shoot you. I think he means it." He was so mad. Like I've never heard before. Brian thought, then went to his study. He came back with a syringe. "Erase the plan," he said. "Put this in your purse. Call an Uber and we'll follow you. When you get a chance, stab him with it. All of it. Then call me. Well, be close. Well, grab him, put him in my car's trunk." "What's this?" she asked. "It's a mix I made for him," Brian said. "Some strong stuff, smack, and a thing to knock him out. It works fast. Don't fret, it won't harm him. Just jab him with it, and when he's down, call me." "Okay," he gave her the needle, and she slipped it into her bag. "All right," she said. "Just swear you won't hurt him." "Well, try," Brian said. "Right, guys?" he said, looking at his three pals who chuckled. He looked back at Emily. "Go on, book your ride." She booked an Uber for herself in 30 minutes and went upstairs to get ready. After her ride came, she took off. Brian and his mates followed her in their car, parking a block away. They didn't see the white van parked across from Brian's place. Soon after he talked to Emily, Samuel's phone buzzed again. It was Brian calling. "What's going on?" he asked. "Just letting you know, some of my guys heard a talk between your wife and her friends," Brian said. "What?" Samuel asked. "How?" "Just the magic of tech, mate," he said. "It's crazy what we can hear these days with a fancy mic. Your wife is catching an Uber, and her gang is tailing her. They plan to drug you, then take you. Whatever it is, it's in her bag. She's going to use it on you when she can. My team will tail Brian and his group once they set off." "Man," Samuel said. "Yep," Brian said. "Just stay sharp. He'll text when they head out. Turn on the spy tools when she arrives, and he'll keep an eye out. I'm not far. He'll call the cops when it's time. Be ready." "Okay," Samuel said. "Thanks." He waited and then got a text. "They're on the move. It's go time," Samuel told himself. He had around 20 minutes before they came, so he hid the shotgun where he was sure Emily wouldn't easily see it and turned on the spy gear. Then he went to the kitchen and got a plastic bag for the syringe and a tissue. He saw the Uber stop in front of his house and watched as Emily paid the driver and stepped out. She looked really worried and held her purse tight over her left shoulder. He flipped the switch to light up the fireplace and watched as the pictures and her dress started to burn. She came to the door and opened it slowly. She made a face as she smelled the smoke. Samuel didn't care. Her eyes popped when she saw the ruined portrait above the fireplace and then her dress and photos turning to dust. "My wedding dress," she cried out. "Our photos. Samuel, why are you doing this?" Tears ran down her cheeks, but he felt nothing. "I wanted you to see what you did to us," he said. She saw the beer bottles and cigarette butts in her sweet candy dish. "I thought you couldn't drink much," she said, "and I never knew you smoked." "I did smoke but quit," he said. "And about drinking, truth is, I turn real mean when I'm drunk. Last time, I almost beat a man to death. He was bigger than me. I chose never to get drunk again, just like you chose to be with Brian." "Oh my God, Samuel," she sobbed. "What did I do?" "You tell me," he said. "What happened to you? You were the nicest, calmest person I knew. Did you take dumb pills? Did Brian hit you with some crazy love beam? Since when do you do drugs? And all these men you're with customers mostly," she said low. "Brian made me do it." "Great," Samuel said. "You know what you did could make Sullivan's money go under. Tell me, when did you first want to drug me and hurt me? Was this your plan? Or did Brian make you do it?" She stared at him, shocked. "I didn't," she started, but Samuel stopped her. "Shut it," he snapped, pulling out his phone. He played a video and let her listen to her own voice and her friends talking while they stood over him. She went pale hearing her own words. "How did you find that?" she asked. "It's not important," he said. "What matters is Samuel and the board saw this video. The cops will see it too. We're done, and if I have a say, you'll be behind bars for a long time. I just want to know why." "You don't get it," she said. "It's a long tale. Maybe you can tell me when I'm less mad," Samuel said. He watched her as she tried to open her bag, but before she could, he grabbed it, spilling its contents on the table. He saw a syringe with dark stuff inside and picked it up with a tissue. "Was this for me?" he asked. "Do you even know what's in this?" "Not really," she said. "Not really?" he mocked. "So you were going to inject me, not knowing what it could do. You're twisted, you know that? Did Brian make you do it?" She nodded. "Yes," she said softly. "If Brian told you to hurt yourself, would you?" he asked. "Let me guess. You inject me, then call him to come get me, right?" Shamefully, she nodded again. "Yes," she said. "Okay," Samuel said. "You're going to call Brian. Put it on speaker so I can hear both sides. You're going to tell Brian you did what he asked," Samuel said. "He'll handle it from there. But don't you let on that I'm waiting for him. Got it? So I'm setting him up?" she asked. "Yes," Samuel said. "Any questions?" She shook her head. "No," she said. "I get it." "Good," Samuel said. "Now do it and no funny stuff." Samuel watched as she made the call and put the phone so all could hear. "Brian, it's me, Emily," she said. "It's done. Samuel's out." "Good job," Brian said. "Well, come over now." She hung up and looked at Samuel. "He's going to be mad when he sees you're not really out," she said. "Too bad for him," Samuel said. "Remember, no hints, no giving it away, or I might take you out myself." He sat back and waited for Brian to show. Through the window, he saw Brian and his 3 friends come in. He closed his eyes just a bit but kept watching. Brian came in, looked around, then walked towards Samuel. "You did good," he told Emily. "Now we're going to shove him in the car." Brian bent down to grab Samuel, but before he could touch him, Samuel's eyes snapped open. Brian was caught off guard, and Samuel hit him hard in the throat. Brian stumbled back, and Samuel got up. Brian tried to clear his head, but Samuel kicked him hard. The other 3 tried to jump in, but Samuel's crew following them held them back. Brian was down, hurting bad. Samuel moved in, knife in hand, and pulled Brian's head back. "Say sorry to God," Samuel hissed. "I'm going to end you." Brian was so scared he wet himself as Emily watched in shock. Who was this man? She wondered, as Samuel pushed the knife closer. Brian stepped in. "Enough," Brian said from the doorway. "Stop," yelled Brian, catching all eyes. "Don't do it. Drop that knife. Cops are coming. He needs to go," Samuel yelled. By then, Brian was by Brian on the ground. "Yeah, he's bad and should be gone," Brian spoke, but not by you. If you do it, he won't feel a thing. Hell just be dust. But you'll be locked up. You want him to pay, but that's no payback. This isn't like war, pal. Let the law handle it. I'm asking you as a mate. Let's not do this. Let the cops take him. Hell get what's coming. All of them will. Samuel looked at his buddy. He could see Brian scared, shaking. He slowly moved the knife away and got up. Down there, Brian was crying. Brian flipped him so he faced down and tied his hands back. Brian then told Emily, "You two down." And she did, facing down, hands back. Tears dropped as she saw a photo of her and Samuel burn up. Samuel watched from the sofa as Brian checked the ties on both Emily and Brian. His crew had 3 more tied up outside. They heard cop cars pull up. "Give me your phone," said Brian. "He'll talk to the cops first." Samuel handed it over and watched as Brian went out. Brian lifted his head, looking at Samuel. The smirk was gone. Seems he needed a real scare to lose it. "You know what? Dad did like you more," Brian said. Samuel shook his head. "Not true, Brian," Samuel said. "He just wished you'd grow up to fill his shoes." "Did you almost chop my head off?" Brian asked. "I guess we won't know, will we?" Samuel replied. "But I can tell you this. Where you're going, the folks won't think twice like I did. And if you ever come at me again, I won't think twice either." Brian laid back, quiet. 3 big cops came in and looked around. They picked up Brian and Emily, told them their rights, and took them to their cars. One cop saw the needle in a bag on the table and picked it up. "Was this for you?" he asked Samuel. "Yes," he said. The cop wrote down what Samuel said. After a bit, he looked at Samuel. "You know you're lucky, right?" he said. "Nope," Samuel said. "My Marine buddy had my back." The cop smiled and shook his head. "Semper Fi," the cop said, shaking Samuel's hand. "Ora," Samuel replied. After they left, Brian walked into the room and sat down. "Got another one of those?" he asked, nodding at the beers. "I might have a few," Samuel said. "Isn't it a bit early after what happened?" "No," Brian said as Samuel gave him a beer. "How you feeling?" "Okay," Samuel said. "Feels like when I was in Iraq. Need to cool off a bit." "About that," Brian said. "I talked to Steve this morning. He said he's got it all sorted if you want to hit Vegas for a few days. Gave me his number for you." "I might just do that," Samuel said. "Got some stuff to sort out here first." Brian pulled out a couple of cards and gave them to Samuel. "Here's Steve's number," he said. "And this other one is for a divorce lawyer, Lisa Morgan. She's tough, really hates cheaters. I made the call to her this morning. She's waiting for you to come by her office at 7:30 a.m. sharp next Wednesday." Brian said. "Thanks," Samuel said, his head moving up and down. "For everything. Hey, always together, bro." "All in," Brian said. Samuel laughed at that. "Yeah, big time," he said back. After they had finished their drink, Brian got up and looked around. "This place looks like it needs a clean, so we'll head out," he said. "See you, buddy," Samuel said. "They'll swing by later to pick up all the spy stuff." Brian left, and Samuel started to clean up the house. Later that day, a call came from Samuel Jackson. "Samuel, it's Samuel Jackson," the older guy said when Samuel picked up the phone. "Yes, Mr. Lee. How can I help?" Samuel asked. "Just call me Samuel," he said. "I saw your email and the video. The board and I all think you're right about what you wrote, which was really something." "Thanks, Samuel," Samuel said. "You're welcome," he replied. "We also think Emily and Brian need to go for good. They're locked up now. I'm going to handle it myself at the jail. And there's more." "What's up?" Samuel asked. "We think you should take a break. Cool off a bit," Samuel said. "Got any place in mind?" "A buddy said he'd have me in Vegas for a few days," Samuel said. "Got a lawyer meeting Wednesday, then I'm off." "Vegas," Samuel said. "Sounds perfect to forget all this for a while. Have a good trip, Samuel. We'll see you back in a week from Wednesday." "Thanks, Samuel." "He'll do that," Samuel said. "Just one more thing," Samuel said. "With Brian gone, we all think you're the right guy for his spot." "Me?" Samuel said. "Sure," Samuel said. "We like how you did things, and the top folks have been watching you for some time. They're really happy with your job. You'll get a bigger pay and some extra stuff with that step up, but you earned it." "Thanks, Samuel said. Hold off on thanking me, Samuel said. First off, we need you to keep an eye on the outside checkup we're having. We got folks from another group coming to look over all that Brian did while he was here. They'll talk to you and you'll let me know what they find, good or bad. That sounds smart, Samuel said. Since I sent that email, I found out Brian made Emily do bad things with some of our clients. Oh no, Samuel said. They'll trust you to handle it. For now, have a good trip, and we'll catch up a week from Wednesday. See you then, Samuel said. Thanks. After talking with Samuel got his house in order, then cut the grass like he did every Saturday. He called Steve Mitchell later and they caught up. Want to come out for a bit? Have some fun? Steve asked. Yeah, sure, Samuel said. Great, Steve said. Come over. They'll sort you out with a nice place and show you around. Then you're on your own. Just remember, this is New Orleans, not Rio de Janeiro. They had a good laugh at that. They'll keep that in mind, Steve, Samuel said. See you Wednesday night. See you, Samuel, Steve said. Brian dropped by to pick up his stuff. Quick news, Brian said. Cops raided Brian's spot and found a ton loads of drugs, gear, sex things, videos, the lot. Looks like Brian was into some messed up stuff. My buddy on the force thinks they might even find kid video in there. Wow, Samuel said. After dinner, Samuel was so tired he went right to sleep. The next day, he started throwing away all of Emily's stuff into trash bags. He put them in the garage, planning to wait before giving them away, just in case she ended up in jail. While cleaning out her clothes, he found a really big black toy that scared him. It was huge, like a hat. He guessed that was for him, and it made him shiver. He also found something weird he couldn't name. After looking it up, he found out it was for keeping a man from enjoying himself too much. It seemed there was no end to how bad she could be. He bagged up her things and put them in the garage. The next morning, he was at lawyer Lisa Morgan's place by 8. She took him in at once. She read his papers and listened as he talked. She told him about how California splits things in a divorce. Since they didn't have kids and the house was his first, he'd likely keep it. She said the money left in their shared bank would probably go to Emily, but she couldn't use her cheating against her in court. The crimes Emily might go to jail for, though, could affect things. Lisa also thought it was not likely he'd have to give money to Emily while she was locked up. But that might change when she was out. They'll try to make this easy, Lisa said. They'll get the papers ready and send them to her. If she agrees, we'll go to the judge. Then we wait 5 months, Samuel said. Yes. Before he left, he paid her for her work. He made a stop at the local jail to tell Emily he was getting a divorce. He sat down and watched as she was let in. She looked tired, and the orange outfit didn't suit her at all. They picked up phones to talk with a thick glass between them. Hi, Emily, Samuel said. Hi, Samuel, she replied. I went to see a lawyer today. I'm going to get a divorce, he said. I guessed you might, she said. When do you go to court? He asked. Brian tomorrow morning, she said. The DA wants to keep us in jail with no bail. That's probably for the best, he said. Tell me the truth now. What's that? She asked. How did things get so bad? He asked. She looked ashamed. At first, the job was going well, she said. Brian seemed okay. But everything changed after Michael died. Brian was mad he didn't get promoted and blamed you, thinking his dad had set it up for you. That's nuts, Samuel said. Michael always hoped Brian would take over someday. I know, she said. We went to Los Angeles that weekend at a club with some clients. We danced and drank. Sure, I flirted a bit but didn't think it was too much. Suddenly, I felt amazing, and the next thing I ended up in bed with 2 of the guys. Brian joined later. She paused. The next day, I saw what had happened and felt so bad, she said. Then Brian showed me some photos and videos he took. He said he'd show them to you unless I did what he wanted. So he forced you to do things, Samuel said. And I bet he gave you drugs too. He did, she said. He told me later. Not shocked, Samuel said. They found lots of drugs at his place, even ones for making people fall asleep without knowing. Did he make you take drugs like cocaine? She nodded. Yes, she said. And weed and other stuff. So how many of our people did you sleep with? Samuel asked. She just shrugged. I don't know, she said. Lots. Brian set it up, and that's what I did when we went out. Samuel shook his head. I found some of your things, Samuel said. Did you plan to use them on me? She started to cry. Yes, she said, crying. I'm sorry. I didn't want to. You seemed into it, Samuel said. Drugging me, attacking me, making me a toy for Brian's fun. Was our dinner about the Anderson project? She shook her head. No, she said. It was for planning Saturday's party. So you planned it all before? Samuel asked. Emily nodded. Yes, she said softly. I'm sorry, Samuel. That's the only thing you've said that I believe, he told her. Can you forgive me? She asked. He laughed a bit before he answered. No way, he said. You were with that jerk and who knows how many more. Then you plotted to drug me and hurt me. You're crazy, and don't even think about staying friends. I get it, Samuel, she said. I hope it was worth it for you, he said. Bye, Emily. He hung up and saw her do the same, tears on her face. He went home, packed, and left for Vegas. He met Steve Mitchell there and they had a good time. At dinner later, Steve showed him around and offered tips for the game tables, then walked him to his room. Samuel walked in and saw a young girl with dark hair sitting on the bed. She stood up when they came in. Samuel, meet Candy, Steve Mitchell said. She'll show you around while you're here. Steve, I don't think I need this, Samuel said. Don't worry, son, Steve said. After what happened with your wife, this is what you need. Have fun, and what happens here stays here. They all laughed. Well, I have to go. Have fun, he said and left. Samuel looked at Candy. Are you, he started. Escort, Candy cut in. Call girl? Not anymore. Steve helped me get out of a bad spot. Now I'm clean, in school and working a real job. He told me about you and asked if I'd spend time with you. That's it. If you want, I can go and you won't see me again. No, Samuel said. Steve's right. I could use someone to talk to. And you seem nice. Want to go out for a drink? That sounds good, she said with a smile. They went out, had drinks, talked and danced for hours, then came back to his room. She stayed the night and made him forget his worries. He woke up to her, making him feel good. After they showered together and got ready. I have class today, but I can meet you here tonight, she said. Let's do that, he said. They kissed and she left. He had breakfast, then went to the casino. He won $500 listening to Steve's advice. He spent it on dinner, drinks, and a show with Candy that night. She made him happy again. The week went on like this, and by Saturday he was ready to go back to his life. Candy was sad to watch him leave, but she got it. She gave him her phone number and email in case he ever wanted to reach out. He liked her but didn't see it turning into something big. She was way younger and had her whole life to live yet. He thought, who knows? He drove home, smiling, thinking of Candy. Once home, he caught up on news about Emily and her group. The judge, after seeing proof from the lawyer, made them stay in jail with no way to get out. He also heard from Lisa that Emily got the divorce papers. Lisa said Emily signed them right away, and they were now with the court. In 6 months, he'd be free from her. On Wednesday, he went back to work to find his stuff in Brian's old office. Everyone said hi and good luck in his new job. He got comfy in his new space and met the outside checkers. He helped them get ready and met his new helper, Sophia Green. He had known her since she joined the company years ago. He liked Sophia, knew she was married, and had done well in her job before. She also knew about his tough time and was kind not to bring it up. The checkup found lots of wrongs in Brian's work. Brian had lied about money on trips with Emily. Then they found out Brian messed up some client accounts. They told the SEC, and Brian ended up facing big trouble with the law. Samuel had to spend lots of time fixing the problems Brian left. Thankfully, they didn't lose any clients due to their quick fix, but they had many tough talks with other bosses who were, of course, upset. Through this time, Samuel kept in touch with Candy, mostly by emails. Soon, she told him that she found someone at school, and they were really into each other. He wasn't shocked and wished her the best. At the same time, Emily and Brian's legal fights went on, with new charges added and lots of back and forth in court. Samuel ended up testifying against his wife and her group, even though her lawyer told him he didn't have to do it since she was his wife. I know I don't have to, but I choose to, he said to her lawyer. Plus, she won't be my wife much longer. The jury couldn't believe what they heard from him. And they were even more stunned when they saw the video Samuel recorded that Saturday night. Then came the day when the jury was ready to share their decision. Samuel were there in the courtroom and saw Emily, Brian, and the other three guys brought in. None could look Samuel in the eyes. By then, the trial was big news. The court got quiet, and the judge asked the jury if they had made their decision. The leader stood up and said they had. As everyone waited, the judge listed the crimes, which included plans to kidnap and hurt someone. Brian had extra counts for the drugs found at his place and the bad photos and videos with young girls. They were found guilty on all counts. The judge said when they would be sentenced, and the 5 who were found guilty were taken away. Samuel left, dodging the many reporters trying to get their story. About 10 days later, they got their sentences. The judge was super mad at them all and really laid it on heavy. Brian's 3 pals got off a bit easier but still had 20 years to face. Emily got 20 years, maybe more, and Brian was hit with 40 years. Plus, he also had to deal with big trouble from the SEC in another court. Emily cried as they took her away. Brian just hung his head low in shame when it was his turn to go. But about 4 months later, Brian was gone for good. He was found without his head in the shower. Seems like he made some folks mad with his cocky way. A month after that, Samuel was in his office doing work stuff when Sophia called him. "Mr. Miller, Dr. Jessica Davis is here to see you," she said. That last name grabbed Samuel's ear. "Let her in," he said. The door opened, and in walked a nice-looking blonde lady. Her hair was long, and she wore a skirt that went down to her knees. She smiled and reached out her hand. "Good to meet you, Mr. Miller," she said. He shook her hand and asked her to sit. "Call me Samuel," he said. "Want something to drink? Coffee, tea?" "Coffee's good," she said. "Black, please. And call me Jessica." Samuel told Sophia to get them coffee and sat back down. "Sullivan," Samuel said, eyeing her. "You related to Michael? His kid, maybe?" She gave a smile and shook her head. "No," she said. "I'm his niece." "I get it," Samuel said. "I thought I knew all of Michael's folks." "I've been tied up," she said. "I was in France when Uncle Michael passed and couldn't make it back for his goodbye." "So what brings you here?" he asked. "I just wanted to meet the guy who beat my mean cousin," she said. "He wasn't your favorite." "Huh?" Samuel asked. She shook her head. "No, not at all," she whispered. "I'm just happy he's finally got what was coming to him. I'm really sorry for what he did to you. From what I've heard, you didn't deserve it. And I'm sorry. My uncle told me a lot about you." "So you're a doc?" Samuel asked. "A doctor? No, I got a PhD in business stuff," she replied. "I teach at UCLA. My uncle and I like some of the same stuff, but I'm all about school stuff. And no, I don't want to be the big boss." Samuel chuckled at that. They kept talking until she said she had to go back to work. Samuel didn't want her to leave, and to be honest, he liked this woman. "Hey, Jessica," Samuel said. "I'd love to keep talking, maybe over dinner if you don't mind hanging out with someone who just has an MBA. She smiled, her eyes shining. "Nothing wrong with an MBA," she said. "I'd like going out with you. Dinner sounds good. How about Red Lobster at 7 tonight?" She gave him a card with her number and where she lived. "Red Lobster it is," Samuel said, taking the card. "They'll get you at 6:30. "Okay, see you then, Samuel." "It was nice meeting you," she said before leaving. That night, Samuel found out that Brian had tried to hurt her right after she turned 18. Feeling shame and scared she might be blamed, she kept quiet, stayed away from Michael and his people, and stayed away from men because of what Brian did. She spent months talking to a therapist while in college. He told her his own story with Brian and what happened with Emily. Jessica was shocked but not surprised. "I'm so sorry," she said. Samuel and Jessica fell hard for each other after dating for a bit. When he popped the question, she jumped on him, covering him in kisses. "So is that a yes?" Samuel gasped for air. "No," she answered. "That's a big yes, Maureen. Now pick me up and take me to bed." "You got it," Samuel said, lifting his future wife. He felt sure things were on the up. Thanks for watching this intense story of betrayal and redemption. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next shocking tale. What would you have done in this situation? Let us know in the comments below. See you in the next video.